Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Daily Mail, okay? Reported from the New York Post or Daily Mail or other publications. These stories point to obvious corruption. People are giving money, not just any type of person. Donors, wealthy business people, billionaires, huge corporations, conglomerates or corporations or companies, sometimes sanctioned even by the United States of America, giving money to James or Joe or Hunter, so Joe's brother and son, or Bill Clinton, or any Democrat. To be a Democrat, well, Republicans too, but mainly the Democratic Party. Trump Republicans, not so much in terms of this type of thing, but the mainstream Republican Party, but definitely the epicenter of corruption in terms of graft, is the Democratic Party today, just like it was in Tammany Hall. When people give money, millions of dollars, into a foundation, or hundreds of thousands of dollars a month to Hunter or to James, what they are doing is they're gaining access in some way or another to the United States government. I'm not making it up. Here's the Daily Mail. So I know that wonderful, beautiful, morally superior Democrats say, well, the Trumps are worse. No, they're not. There's nothing compared to this type of pay-to-play, quid pro quo type of schemes. And they're described in emails in Hunter's laptop. So we'll read Daily Mail. New emails from Hunter business associate reveal he asked for $2 million retainer plus, quote, success fees to help them unfreeze $30 billion in Libyan assets while his father was VP. How can you possibly defend this? If Trump or Eric Trump or Donald Trump Jr. or Jared Kushner did any of this, much less have a laptop with pictures and incriminating data, could you imagine what Jimmy Kimmel and Stephen Colbert and Trevor Noah and like all of late night would do if they had pictures? Seth Meyers. Trevor Noah is interesting, is breaking a little bit away from the groupthink, and to his credit. But I mean, Jimmy Kimmel is basically a Democratic operative on late. There is no late night anymore. Democrats have infused their wonderful, morally superior, apoplectic, hysterical ideology and views within late night, Hollywood, social media algorithms. We couldn't talk about this. One study showed they spent about 25 minutes on Hunter's laptop and emails. I can go on forever, but let's get to this story. Emails from Democratic donors. 2 Democratic donors indicated that Hunter had offered to help unfreeze frozen Libyan assets. $30 billion of frozen money. The 2 were working to unfreeze billions of dollars in the former leader that was ousted during President Obama's failed NATO intervention that, oh, by the way, Biden and Madam Secretary were a part of. They had caused endless chaos and mayhem in that country. So since 2011, it's only been endless chaos and mayhem and civil conflict. And that was a failed NATO intervention. But here, the 2 were working to unfreeze billions of dollars in the former leader's foreign assets for the new Libyan government. They stood to gain 5% of whatever they were able to freeze up for Libya, which could potentially mean hundreds of millions of dollars. Hit subscribe to this channel right now. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, we're right at 196. We're almost at 200,000 subscribers. I will have a segment today. It was very successful. I mean, for a small little channel, it was very successful. on my comedic and satirical channel below. Indict and Imprison 45. It's below in the pinned comment. The new installment will be up right after this. So once you watch this, go to the pinned comment and click on the latest video. You will love it. It's New York, the New York prosecutors, let's say, indicting and arresting and imprisoning Donald Trump. This is all satire. It's comedy. This is exactly how, wonderful, beautiful liberals think, and you'll laugh, and it's awesome. People apparently loved my first segment, so it's just basically me being somebody that watches CNN and MSNBC and reads the New York Times and thinks that they're, completely objective. And so that's my new persona on that channel. It's purely satire, it's comedy, and I'll have a segment today on the stock market crash channel, so I have 2 other channels there below in the pinned comment. If you want to support my work, my Patreon is below, and I will look at opening other platforms for people who do want to support my work. So anyway, $30 billion in emails that show $30 billion that he wanted to unfreeze. The interesting thing is, you want to talk about, well, if the rebuttal is, you can't prove that people are giving money for access to the U.S. government. He's not even in the government. Yes, he influences the government, just as Joe's brother James does. When you give examples, so here's an example in writing. Not only is there a New York Post article where one of the executives that was paying him $80,000 a month or so, $50 to $80,000 a month, Hunter, from an oil and gas company that is now in a country now being invaded under mashed potato brains, under the watch and tenure of the adults in the room. President Mashed Potato Brains has done nothing but preside over catastrophes. And, of course, Democrats find some way to circumvent responsibility. So one of the worst geopolitical nightmares in world history or modern European history is taking place with the adults in charge. And somehow, some way, Max Boot of the Washington Post found a way to blame Trump. I don't know how, but he did. It's pretty hilarious. Maybe I should read that on the Indict and Imprison 45 channel. But anyway, quote, since he travels with Dad, he is connected everywhere in Europe and Asia, where the former leader of that country had money frozen. Adding, Hunter also said he had high-level access in China and that he can help there. They're getting access, and they're getting preferential treatment, and they're getting hooked up in some way. What Democrats, when you tell a wonderful Democrat who thinks that Trump's the epicenter of corruption and that the Hunter story is not that big of a deal, when you tell them, well, Biden forced out a prosecutor, that was the opinion. This is an independent article today. It's hilarious by an operative or journalist, or either a donor or not a donor, somebody linked to the Democratic Party. It was like a press release. And they said Biden forced out a prosecutor because he was enacting the opinion of Western governments, the opinion of the United States of America and Western governments looking at corruption in that country. Nobody implements the opinion of the consensus of Western governments. You either get an order from President Obama, or it's a State Department, the Secretary of State decides that's the course of action, or the Vice President himself decides that. We have no evidence that anyone told him. Lord Almighty, we have no evidence that anyone told that Vice President Mashed Potato Brains at the time to force out a prosecutor in a country that eventually is getting invaded under his watch. We have no evidence at all. Zero evidence, other than people think that's the case. Really smart people believe that's the case, and everyone is okay with it, but nobody told him to do it. President Obama is not on record as ever saying that prosecutors should be forced out. Interestingly enough, the prosecutor was was investigating the company that Hunter was getting paid when he was on the board of directors of that company. Now, there's an example of the vice president's son influencing U.S. foreign policy. You give that example, you're just going to get an apoplectic response. You can't prove anything. And then they say, well, there are no examples. Well, when Mashed Potato Brains was saying that, oh yeah, forced out this prosecutor, he also said the officials in that country, okay, the Ukrainian officials stated to him, to his face, you don't have that right. And that's part of him bragging and boasting about what he did. You don't have that right. You don't have that right to do that, but he did it anyway. Okay, and then he says, "Well, call President Obama." So it's within that, but then you actually point this out. Well, you can't prove anything. Uranium One giving money to the foundation, and then President Obama doesn't veto the sale, and then you know who in that country, oh my God, that installed Trump gets 20% of U.S. uranium capacity at that moment. Oh, well, you can't prove it. You can't prove anything. Correlation doesn't equal causation. Except with Trump, if something happens in the farthest reaches of the universe, then it's Trump's fault. It has to be. I mean, they don't use the same logic. They're devoid of basic logic, basic critical thinking skills. Here's the thing. I like Donald Trump, DeSantis. I like Tulsi Gabbard. I like Rand Paul. They're all opposed by the Lincoln Project, and we'll just keep it at that. I mean, there's a lot of things that they're different in here and there in numerous ways, but I like politicians that are opposed by the Lincoln Project people and by the Democratic establishment. Okay. But if Tulsi Gabbard or Donald Trump or Rand Paul or Ron DeSantis had emails showing that one of their family members was offering to unfreeze $30 billion in Libyan assets for a $2 million plus retainer, and these emails were written while and they were talking about how he's always traveling with dad. Okay, since he's connected everywhere in Europe and Asia, he travels with dad. Since he travels with dad, he is connected everywhere in Europe and Asia and has high-level access in China. If those emails where you had Democratic donors saying, hey, you know what, we can unfreeze $30 billion. We can unfreeze $30 billion in these assets. They're frozen for a reason, which it was failed foreign policy to begin with. But there's still a reason why they were frozen. They want to cut. The Democratic donors want to cut, and these are Democratic donors. They're giving money to the Democratic Party. We saw what happened with a Democratic donor recently, arrested, sent to prison, and we saw what happened to the Lieutenant Governor of New York. But it's like, if Donald Trump had this, could you imagine the investigation? Could you imagine the hysteria? Could you imagine that he wanted to unfreeze, that Eric Trump wanted to unfreeze $30 billion in Libyan assets? Oh my God. And that emails show that he was always traveling with Donald Trump, his father. And that, you know what? And then the negative side, of course, and that he had access to all these countries. But the negative side, of course, they talk about his substance abuse issues. So it's well known. Hunter is essentially a national security risk because he still has access to the highest reaches of government. Sure, he's not just close with his father. He's probably close with numerous people in the U.S. government. Secret Service helped him out when his girlfriend threw his .38 in a dumpster. That's according to Politico. Anyway, this is all public record. Daily Mail, New York Post, Politico talks about it. Business Insider. You'll find articles on this every single day. What Democrats say is, oh, it's just conspiratorial, it's fantasy. No, the truth about them, they have to turn into some kind of fantasy. Anyway, give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe right now. Definitely watch my latest installment on Indict and Imprison 45. You'll love it. Give me your thoughts below. This is a story that if it was anything to do with Trump kids, it would be clear quid pro quo, pay to play schemes, a clear example of graft, bribery, or graft, but you don't get that. They don't use the same logic. They don't use the same standard logic to judge themselves as they do to judge Trump. And that's the biggest problem with American politics. Give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe right now.